Good afternoon, everyone. It is June 26th, 3 p.m. regular meeting of the Community Resources Committee. And pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, which extends through June 30, 2027, the ability of public bodies to meet in a remote or hybrid manner without a quorum of members in person, this meeting will be conducted via remote means. Members of the public who wish to access the meeting may do so via Zoom or by telephone. No in-person attendance of members of the public is possible, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. We are going to go through quickly what the agenda order is, and then we will get to our action item, which is a conversation with the applicants who would like to sit on the Zoning Board of Appeals. So I'm going to go around and make sure everyone can be heard. Let's see, I'll just go by my screen. Jennifer.
Yes, I can hear.
Pat DeAngelis.
Present.
Kathy Shane.
Yes.
Councillor Haneke.
Present.
And Pam Rooney is present. So the members of the committee are here. There are no public hearings today. We do have a time for public comment. If there are folks in the audience, looks like there is one member of the public in the audience. This is an opportunity for public comment. Public comments are on matters only within the jurisdiction of the CRC. Members are welcome to express their views for up to 3 minutes. The CRC does not engage in a dialogue or comment on a matter raised during public comment. When called on, please identify yourself by stating your full name and district or address. Is there anyone in the public who would like to make a public comment at this time? I'm not seeing any hands, so we can close the public comment period and move into the action items, which is our conversation. I first of all just want to say a huge thanks to Jennifer, who has shepherded all of the correspondence and the communications with everyone on the screen. So thank you. That
of course.
a huge task just to keep things moving. We are going to go through the following process. We have a number of questions which were shared with you ahead of time, and the counselors will take turns asking the questions, and each of you gets the opportunity to answer all of you will get to answer each question as we do it, and then rotate who begins the next round of questioning. So that said, Jennifer, is there anything you want to add as far as practice or process?
I don't think so. The only thing I think might be helpful as if each of the committee members asks a question is to let the candidates know what order they'll be answering in. I think that would be helpful.
Thank you. My note-taking ready.
So,
Pat?
Should I get started?
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Well, I want to welcome the four of you. My question is pretty direct. We're going to answer it in the following order: David Alfeld, Hilda Greenbaum, Stephen McCasey, and David Slaviter. And the question is, what prompted you to apply to serve on the ZBA? David Alfeld?
Yes. So I am completing my first year as an alternate on the ZBA, and I had a chance to serve on a couple of panels and enjoyed the experience, found it interesting, and found I was well suited to the work. And so I thought I'd see if it's appropriate to continue.
Thank you very much. And now we'll move to Hilda.
Hilda, you need to unmute.
I applied again to serve on the Zoning Board of Appeals because as an observer and a journalist covering this, I saw there were areas coming up like Chapter 40B applications that nobody on the board at the time, 3 years ago, had done that. And I've filled in since. I feel that I have skills that complement the other members of the board, and I enjoy working with them.
Thank you, Hilda. Stephen?
I saw that there was a need for volunteers, and I am happy to be of service.
Thank you. And David Slaviter?
I believe in supporting the town by participating when it's appropriate. I've been on the ZBA for 3.5 years, including 1.5 years as a full member. And I feel that it's a good fit for me, that I'm well qualified, and I would like to continue.
Okay, thank you very much, and I'll pass it to Mandy Jo.
Thank you. The order of responses, you're going to figure this out pretty easily. We're just going to go one down. We'll start with Hilda, and then we'll go to Stephen, and then David Slaviter, and then David Alfeld. And the question is, please explain your understanding of the role of the ZBA. Hilda?
The role of the ZBA, as I see it, is to handle petitions by members of the community who want to do something that's only allowed to happen with a permit from the zoning board of appeals. It's not an activity that's allowed, or a building or a structure that's allowed by right, but whether it fits into the needs of the community, the needs of the abutter, the needs of the applicant. It's not something that necessarily would be something we would need to allow by right, but needs to knock heads together to come up with a compromise to satisfy all the parties involved.
Thank you. Stephen?
Yes, my understanding is that the Zoning Board of Appeals is a quasi-judicial body that listens to applicants that are proposing different projects. And the goal is to make sure that those projects fit within the zoning bylaws and adhere to other permitting requirements. With the intention of keeping all the neighbors in the community in mind.
Thank you. David Slaviter?
The ZBA is in fact a quasi-judicial body that is tasked with interpreting and applying town rules. It reviews proposals that ask for exceptions to town rules, and the main role of the ZBA is to protect the town from inappropriate and harmful development by reviewing these applications.
Thank you. David Alfeld?
I think the other candidates have mentioned much of what I would have said, but I'll just add that, or maybe give a slightly different twist, that we have the bylaws which describe constraints on what can be developed where and what nature of development can occur. And there are circumstances where a property owner would like an exemption, a variance, a special permit for those conditions. And the ZBA's job is to do that, carefully looking at the conditions that are required to make an exception to the bylaws and balancing, and this is the quasi-judicial part, balancing the various interests involved and making a judgment about the appropriateness of that particular exception to the bylaws.
Thank you. I'm going to pass it on to Pam.
Great. I have question number 3. And the order of response is going to be Stephen, then David Slaviter, David Alfeld, and Hilda. What experience, knowledge, or expertise might you bring to the ZBA that can make it successful? Please include any experience you have appearing before the planning board or ZBA or watching one of their meetings. Again, Stephen, David Sloviter, David Alfeld, and Hilda.
Yes, I believe that I am a skillful listener, in listening to all parties, in any particular matter. I think, that skill of active listening, and really wanting to understand what is being said, what's being discussed, making sure that the parties are heard. I would say that that is the biggest expertise that I would be bringing. Um, I have not gone before the planning or zoning board myself, but I have sat in on the meetings and watched the recordings. And I was very impressed and encouraged by the process that is taken for those meetings and how it is structured so that the applicants, are heard. And then the discussion that follows, clarification if needed, is always asked by the members of the zoning board. And I appreciate the discussion after listening to different appeals.
Thank you. David Sloviter.
Well, I bring many years of business experience, but specifically for the ZBA, I bring 3.5 years of actually being on the ZBA, chairing committee meetings, attending everything. I've missed 2 site visits in 3 years. So I bring a lot of ZBA experience to the ZBA, and that I think really qualifies me. Thank you.
Thank you. David Alfeld.
Right, so my background is in civil engineering. I taught at UMass for many years and have had other involvements with it. And my expertise areas in water related topics. And I had an opportunity to use this expertise. I was on a panel for the University Drive Amity Street project, and that was initially approved. A special permit was approved last spring 24, but they had to come back for a relatively minor adjustment of it based on some additional data that they had received regarding the high water table and certain wetland issues. And I think my expertise was useful in the evaluation of that proposal from the developer.
Thank you. Hilda, please.
I guess my biggest contribution to the board would be I've sat on literally 4 sides of the table in that room. I started 45 years ago observing zoning and planning for the League of Women Voters. I have been an appellant. I have been an abutter to many applications. I've been a chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals as acting chairman, actually, as vice chair. And I taught at every school in the Valley except Amherst College and done research with various people. Trained as a scientist, I know how to look at things objectively. And I think I would be the only woman on the board since 2012. I live in North Amherst. We are not represented on the board. I am also a person who has done a lot of house restoration over the years and been a landlord, so I can add the landlord-tenant point of view to the board. I know how to read a lease. I know what should be in a lease. I know the difference between a boarding house and renting an apartment by the room. I don't see a difference there. It comes under a different section of the bylaw. It's et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you. I'm going to pass to Kathy Shane.
And people should let me know if my voice doesn't sound quite right. I'm in another country across the ocean right now. So can everyone hear me fine? Yeah. So the question is, tell us about an experience you've had collaborating with a group particularly where opinions conflicted or the decision was controversial. And the order will be first David Slovator, then David Offield, then Hilda Greenbaum, then Stephen Casey. David Slovator, you start off.
I have been the president of two boards, both for extended periods. One was a homeowner association in a resort community in Colorado, and the other was a synagogue in suburban Philadelphia, both of which are inherently controversial and inherently loaded with differing opinions. You can't get three people in either of those together without having three different opinions. In both cases, I listened well, I reconciled differences, and they were both very successful positions, or I wouldn't have been reelected 20 years in a row for the homeowner association. And I have also had to deal with differing opinions in business over many years. So this is a lot of training for listening and figuring out compromise. Thank you.
David Offield.
Yes, thank you. I was on university faculty for 3 decades, so I could have many, many stories of conflicts. I played leadership roles in many of the meetings that occurred there, but I think I'll pick one story, which is, I think about 15 years ago, I was chair of the Board of Health, the Amherst Board of Health, and we were looking at smoking regulations, tobacco smoking regulations. And there was a proposal to ban outdoor smoking on town property, which would include the town common. And we had a public hearing about this. And at that, you may remember the extravaganza, which used to occur on the town common. And we had a packed room turnout of folks from the extravaganza community who were very concerned about this proposed regulation that we were considering. So it was a rather contentious and exciting meeting to chair. As it turns out, we determined ultimately that the regulation would be impractical to enforce. So we scaled it back somewhat in the long march of discouraging public smoking of tobacco. So that's just one example.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hilda.
David stole my joke. It wasn't fair.
I'm sorry.
I
I don't try and step on you, Hilda.
I've served on many committees, the Jewish community of Amherst since we started before 75. We started in 69. But the biggest argument we had there is over whether we should have a red light or a flashing yellow light at the crosswalk, and we got neither in the end. But I have chaired several hearings with a packed town room for petitioners on Sunset and Lincoln Avenue. And I learned a lot from that. One of the things that I did learn is that the best thing to do when you have controversy is to continue the hearing to another date and encourage the two parties to talk to each other. And that was, I discovered, worked very well with the Sunset hearing that I observed. It happened to be, was it, you guys know, it was planning board that had, whatever. The neighbors and the developers sat down and worked out a set of compromises that worked out, I think, for everybody. It looks like a successful project. And then there was a neighbor across the street from another building on Pine Street. And he thought that rehabbing that building and renting it out as two units was going to be very detrimental to him, and they went off to a continued hearing and came back with a compromise. And the building looks very nice and very quiet when I drive by, so I guess that worked.
Thank you.
Okay. So if the next
Wait,
question.
Stephen.
no, we have Stephen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
Sorry.
sorry. Go ahead.
You've done that before.
Hi, thank you.
Sorry, Stephen.
No worries. So when I think of an example, there can be many. One that immediately jumps out to mind has to do with uniforms. I am an avid soccer player, and I have put in teams into various competitions and such. And along with that comes a lot of organizations and balancing needs of the teams. And uniform colors, oddly enough, seems to usually be a topic of contention. Why, I'm not quite sure, but I think the more important thing is that it is, and how that is resolved. I think having the different opinions be heard, and listening and empowering whoever might have a contrasting idea is beneficial, because then they will want to be engaged as they feel that they're heard. And I think it leads to collaboration, which I am in big favor of collaboration. And so really just facilitating the conversation so that a group can come to a consensus. And so that's what I've done for many years, organizing soccer. Again, uniforms, that is usually the biggest issues, but it could stem from anything from the days that we're played to what field we play on. But again, it really just come back to making sure that everyone's input is heard and truly valued, depending on whatever direction is taken. I think as long as everyone feels included, they will, have more morale, and whatever the contributions they make to that effort will be greater.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen. And the next question, the order of responses will be Stephen first, David Sloviter, David Offeld, and then Hilda. And the question is, when interpreting a provision of the zoning bylaw, should the ZBA consider the intent of that provision, its common sense meaning, and/or some other factor? And we'll start with Stephen.
Thank you. I think for that, all three need to be considered. The original intent of the provision, its common sense meaning, and the other factors. It really would depend on exactly what that topic is. And I think that is one of the primary functions of the board, is to listen to whatever is brought before them and to know which one of those to apply to it, or maybe what combination applies to it.
Thank you. David Sloviter.
Well, what Stephen said makes a lot of sense. I agree. It is, all of these are important, the intent and the common sense meaning. Other factors that come up should also be considered. It is a quasi-judicial board, which means that judgment is involved. And at the end of the day, when the decision needs to be made, everything needs to be considered and all the facts weighed. Thank you.
Thank you. David Offeld?
Yeah, I have one example here that to elaborate perhaps further on previous David Sloviter and Stephen's comments. And one of the conditions we look at for a special permit is the proposal would not constitute a nuisance due to air and water pollution, flood, noise, odor, dust, vibration, lights, or visually offensive structures. So what is a nuisance? And you can look at a definition of that. You can look at a common sense meaning. And you can also get input from the public because they're the ones who perhaps have a more immediate sense of what would constitute a nuisance in their particular neighborhood. So I think I would agree with Stephen that all factors are considered, and with Mr. Slobodar, that all factors are considered. It's interesting to think how one would find the intent of the original writing of the bylaw. But I suppose that could be done with a little bit of research. So interesting question. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Hilda.
I'm not going to repeat what everybody else said, but I am going to give an example that David sort of reminded me of. And that happened to be one of the first things I served on in the most recent term. And that was a converted dwelling on North Pleasant Street on 18,000 approximately square foot lot, wanted to build a duplex. And it turns out that the very first condition or very first rule in the zoning bylaw is there can only be one principal use on a lot. And so I went, well, and then that's further defined by if there's a complementary use between the two of them, then it's allowed. Well, what's a complementary use? We had always believed there can only be one principal use on a lot. I went and looked at Mr. Mark Bobrowski to see what he had to say about what's a complementary use. I went to the law library and borrowed some books to see if I searched the internet. I found 2 cases across the country that dealt with complementary use, and it happened to be on an multi-acre parcel. You could have a general store with housing on one lot, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to try to complement it. It turns out that it is illegal in this town to put two duplexes on one parcel, and the one parcel wasn't big enough to divide it into 2 parcels to allow that to happen. So that's my one experience of I know where to find, at least look for the answers, but not necessarily find them. But since then, that provision of the bylaw is now being enforced.
Okay.
And there had been several examples that had been allowed to build duplexes on lots with other buildings.
Thank you, Hilda. And I'll pass the baton to Mandy. Joe?
Or maybe Pat?
What about Pat?
Question. I'm sorry, to Pat. Yes, DeAngelis is the first in the alphabet.
I'm sorry, my wife was asking me a question. I'm first in many things and not.
It's
Where am I? So folks, what's your opinion of waivers, exceptions, dimensional special permits in the zoning bylaw? When should they be used and when should they not be used? And the order would be Hilda, Stephen, David Slobodar, and then David Alfeld. Hilda?
Well, the bylaw allows you to waive certain things, like if you have a need for building something in a district that's walkable to downtown and on a bus route, et cetera, you can waive the 2 parking spots per unit. The bylaw allows you to do that if you can prove that it fulfills all the requirements of not needing the extra parking place. The next thing is exceptions. I don't think we can vote for exceptions. I don't think that's allowed. I think you have to go by the rules there. Same thing goes for dimensional special permits. That would have to come under, and it would depend on what the application is for, but you can have a non-conforming use or a non-conforming structure. And if you find that it's not substantially different, not detrimental, not substantially detrimental on the neighborhood, then you can allow to have it, but it has to go through the non-conforming 9.2 section of the bylaw. And yeah, I guess that's my answer to that question. You have to be able to prove that it's not going to be detrimental, and then you can do it.
Thank you, Hilda. Can I hear from Stephen?
Certainly. So I feel that, waivers, exceptions, and dimensional special permits are all, tools that are available, and that there may be times where they should be implemented or not. That would really be on a applicant by applicant basis, in which, the whole petitioning of the zoning board, the listening, referring back to the bylaws, seeing how to interpret those, maybe gathering public input, seeing, the entire scope of the project, and if there was a benefit to the community that would allow that project to move forward, or all of those things would need to be weighed at a zoning board hearing.
Thank you, Stephen. And could I hear from David Slaviter?
Well, all of these exist to provide flexibility, and they should be used to further sensible decisions that comply with the rules and the interest of the community. So they are tools that help the ZBA come to the best possible decision. Thank you.
Thank you. David Alfeld?
Yeah, I'm not sure I have much to add. They of course, they will not be used, and a request will be denied if it doesn't meet the conditions that are required for the particular form of exception, whether it's a special permit or what have you. So yeah, those are tools, and an applicant's welcome to make a proposal, of course, but it's up to the ZBA to make sure that that if it's approved, that it's consistent with the requirements in the bylaws.
Thank you. And I will pass it now to Mandy Jo.
Thank you. The order of responses here, we will start with David Alfeld, and then we'll go to Hilda, and then Stephen, and then David Slaviter. And the question is, what is your approach to incorporating public input into your decision-making? David Alfeld.
Well, like I say, generally to listen to the public, of course. There's, as in any proceeding, there's an opportunity for the public to provide their input either beforehand in writing or during the meeting, and to weigh that as part of the decision-making process. I have to say, in my first year, in my past year as an alternate, I got some excellent. I saw some excellent examples of the ZBA led by Steve Judge doing just this. And the story that the example that jumps out at me is the Greenleaves project. And just quickly, this is a apartment development in Western Amherst, right on the town line, that was started about 25 years ago, I think, with a special permit at that time. And the developer is just wrapping it up and hoping to complete the project, and wanted to make some changes to the special permit that was issued that long time ago. So should we allow those changes? Well, we heard from the public. There's many people that live there already in the first I think it was 4 or 5 buildings that are already there. And the public had lots of comments and a lot of suggestions. We had to remind them that our scope was limited as to what we could do. but we listened carefully and essentially worked with the proponent, the developer, to come up with a proposal that was satisfactory to everybody, I think, or most everybody anyway. So that was, to me, that was a great example of how we take public input and use it as part of the process of developing a solution to the problem that works for as many people as possible. And of course, follows the bylaws.
Thank you. Hilda.
Well, one of the really sad things about the case that David just mentioned was that the people who lived in the complex were never told about the site visit. And it would have been very useful if they had been there, because they could have pointed things out to us that we did not see. One of the things that did show up in one of their photographs was a lot of erosion of the earth behind what was going to be the new parking lot. We wouldn't have known that if the tenants didn't bring it up in the public comment section. I want to point out a place where it was really bad and the neighbors were very upset. And that was when the 40B came up for Coles Lane in North Amherst. And then the neighbors had hired a lawyer from Cambridge who was a specialist in 40B housing. And the way that was set up, not with Steve, with a chair before him and after I was on the board, the chair would set a hearing for 2 hours from 6 to 8, for example. And he would let the proponent speak and leave 10 minutes for the neighbors at the end of the meeting, and there was no getting around that. We had hired a lawyer, and he would not, the lawyer had come from Cambridge, so it meant time and mileage and all that from Cambridge. He would not let the lawyer speak. He said, you've had several months in which you could have made a comment. Well, the point is you can't make the comment. The lawyer can't, or the butters can't make a comment about testimony that hasn't been given yet. Well, he wouldn't even let the lawyer talk. And I'll tell you, the neighbors were very upset. When I was chairing some of these controversial things on Lincoln and Sunset Avenue too in particular, and the room was packed, I let people speak, starting with the back row. You may have, time to say whatever you want to say, get it all out. And then the next person, what do you want to add to that? Please don't repeat what was already said. And people really felt that they were being heard. And some people up here in North Amherst were so bitter about not being heard that they left town, literally. So that's where I stand on public comment.
Thank you. Stephen.
Yes, thank you. So I served as the staff liaison for the Board of Assessors in a town in Franklin County. And at several meetings, there were members of the public, town residents, that came in to voice their opinion or raise a concern on either something that was being voted on. And I did not make any decisions or cast any votes, but I was able to witness the event. And from that, I learned to really appreciate the comments and the opinions and the views of others, appreciating the time that they took out of their day to appear and to represent their ideas or advocate for their group. And it is a very inclusive practice, especially if it is going to affect residents, either their daily lives or what have you. And so my approach to public opinion and comment would be to very much welcome it, because in my opinion, that is one of the jobs of being on the boards, and that is why we would do it, to be of service to the public. And so to not consider public opinion would not align.
Thank you. David Slaviter?
For me, the answer to this question is simple and straightforward. Every resident of Amherst should be heard, and their opinions should be fairly and objectively considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Passing it on to Pam.
Great. This is a tough one. What else would you like us to know about you that makes you a strong candidate for the ZBA? We're going to start with Hilda, then Stephen, then David S, and then David A. What else should we know about you?
I don't know. You've known me for 50 years. What else can I say? You know me from my big mouth at town meeting. You know me, my big mouth at every meeting you've ever been to. I would have applied for the 3-year, or I did apply for the 3-year seat last year, and I ceded it to David because he's younger and he has more chance for a future to add his expertise. But last year I was in the hospital and in rehab, and I didn't think I could take on the full-time job. Now I am prepared to take on the full-time job, and I think you need a woman on the panel, and you need somebody who knows about landlord-tenant relations when it comes to all these non-owner occupied duplexes, which is mostly what we do now. All the big projects have been given to the planning board to allow by right. So in any event, I don't know what to add.
Thank you. Stephen?
Yeah. So I am highly motivated to, be civically engaged, and to really work with a team of individuals who care about the community and who are willing to take the time and weigh the decisions that will affect the community. I am a student and a lifelong resident of Amherst. So I really see a lot of the world, and my approach to things is through that lens of a student. And so I enjoy learning from my peers and my teachers. And so working with the members on the zoning boards, working with members on the other boards would be a very enriching experience. And as someone who intends to lay down roots in Amherst, I think it would be a great way to show my involvement and commitment to the town.
Thank you. David Sloviter?
The most significant experience that I would bring to the ZBA is that I have been a member and I'm currently a full member. During all the time I've been on the board, I participated in many varied cases. I've missed 2 site visits in 3.5 years. I very rarely miss a meeting. And I have chaired ZBA meetings when the permanent chair is not available. In fact, I'm chairing the ZBA meeting tonight at 6 o'clock. I read everything that is distributed for each case, and I'm always certain to be familiar with the application. I believe I enjoy the confidence of my fellow ZBA members and would like the opportunity to continue to serve the town in this capacity. Thank you.
Thank you. David Alfeld?
I've lived in town for 37 years in the same house in central west Amherst. And I think I have a pretty good sense of the values of the town and the hopes of the town for its development. As I mentioned, I have an engineering background and bring that set of skills, which is encompasses topics that often come up before the board: construction issues and water related issues. And I have an interest in serving, being of service to the town. So I think that kind of covers it.
Thank you very much. I'm going to pass the baton to Kathy for question 9.
Okay, so please confirm that you have the time to commit to meetings, hearings, and site visits. And if you currently serve on any other town boards or committees, do you see a conflict with serving on multiple boards? And can you manage the time commitment of all? And the order, I just have to turn to the next page, is start with Stephen and David Slobotar, then David Offield, and we end with Hilda. So Stephen.
Yes, I do have the time to be able to commit to meetings, hearings, and site visits, as well as reading the materials in preparation for the meetings.
Kathy, you just muted yourself.
David Slobotar is next, then David Offield, then Hilda.
Yes, I will continue to have the time to serve on the ZBA, and this will be the only board on which I serve. So no
Yes.
comment.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right. Yeah, I'm retired. I have the time. I'm not on any other town committees or boards. So I don't see any problem with the time commitment.
And Hilda.
Ditto. I will just add to David, I have not missed a site visit in 15 years.
You
on the
win. You win.
Age
Thank you.
before beauty, as they say.
Thank you all.
Okay, last question. Order of responses, David S., David A., Hilda, and Steve. And it's just, are you interested in being a full member, associate member, or either? So David S.
Full member, please.
And David A.?
Either a full or associate. I've been associate for 1 year.
Okay, thank you. Hilda?
I really want to be a full member this time.
Okay, and Stephen?
An associate member.
Okay, thank you. And thank you all. That was a lot of questions and really great answers. Thank you.
Appreciate that very much. So from here on out, the next steps are that we will escort you back into the attendees. You're welcome to stay and listen. We'll be talking about you. And then we're going to take a vote, which gets reported back to the town council so that they can vote on it on Monday night. So we have been given the green light to go ahead with that and have it done in a timely manner. Once votes are taken by the town council, I'm not exactly sure who contacts you, but new terms would begin the next day, essentially on July 1. So as I understood from talking to the town liaison, Jacinta Williams, it appeared that there were no projects or hearings that extended into this next fiscal year, so that we did not have to extend current members' terms to cover that time lag.
Can you say that again, Pam? I'm sorry. I didn't hear the
Which
last.
part of it? Which part of it?
The very last thing you said.
We expect to have everybody voted on by Monday night.
Thank
So
you.
the new terms start July 1.
Thank you. That's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, I'm not exactly sure who makes the contact, but I don't know. Someone will contact you. And so we will be making recommendations. Those recommendations may or may not be upheld by the full council, and whatever comes out of the full council meeting is the recommendation or the appointment itself. So I want to say thanks to everybody. I truly appreciate what it takes to serve on a town committee, especially something like the Zoning Board of Appeals. Towns really rely on folks to step up and offer their skills and capabilities to keep things running in town, and you all are really good examples of that. So thank you. We're going to, let's see if I get to do this properly this time. Mandy, I'm looking to you for help. Oh, I see. Okay, I'm back and I know how to do this. I'm going to go one by one and invite you to be an attendee. So thank you. Thanks a lot, everybody. That work?
No, Stephen is
You-
still,
You still have,
There we
thank
go.
you.
Thank you. So we are back to the five of us, and Athena is there if needed. So we'll open up the conversation for consideration. We have two full 3-year terms, and as many associates as we can possibly provide. So who'd like to open the conversation? Mandy, Haneke.
I think I would support Stephen as an associate member. I would really like to see David Alfeld as a full member, as his experience with civil engineering and particularly water-related issues, I think is something our board needs. And given our coming heavy rain events and what we've been seeing with things, that is valuable to consistently have on hearing panels. And that's what a full member is the consistent on a panel for the ZBA, whereas associate members are less consistent because they're replacing someone else. And so I would like to see him as a full member. At this point, I'm not sure whether I would have leaned towards Hilda or David Slaviter as the other full member, although, David maybe, because looking at the board, they're all still young, but I don't know which one I would lean to, but those are two where I am, and then I'm undecided sort of for the other full member position.
Great, thank you. Anybody else want to offer some comment? Pat, Kathy, Jennifer? Kathy looks like she's trying to raise her hand.
I am. I apologize because I'm on an iPad rather than a computer, so I can't even, I have to touch a screen before I get a hand that I can raise without doing this. I wanted to just say in general, I just thought we had great candidates. They're very thoughtful responses. So I am thrilled that we have slots that we can say yes to everybody. Yes, in terms of not necessarily everyone on full. I totally agree on Stephen on associate. And I know I'm the elementary school building committee. I wished we had an engineer for the same reasons Mandy just said. The land use and what we've got with rain would have been just really helpful. We had architect, but we didn't have an engineer. So I think that's an important resource. And then I am torn between Hilda and David Slobotar. Hilda has had She didn't go into her full experience, but she in the past was on the ZBA and then she was off it. So she has a great deal of knowledge. And I think what I've been able to see is that as an associate, she's been able to play instrumental role, not just as a full. And I, as I said with planning board, I think if people have served one full term and they want to continue, I think it's a good idea to do it. So I lean toward David Slobotor because it's the learning curve on this and watching skills develop, particularly on the more controversial how to bring sides together and come to yes around things is something you don't always just know from the beginning. And the complexity of our zoning laws, where the answers of how do you interpret them, sometimes the words are clear. And sometimes you wish somewhere in the zoning law there was a definition of the term that people are using because there is no definition. And then you really do have to interpret what might someone have meant, or you rely on staff to interpret it. So I think that's where I'm leaning on it, but I'm eager to hear everybody else.
Thank you. Jennifer?
I agree. I'd love to see Stephen Casey as an associate member. It's a great way for him to onboard to a full-time member. I support David Slobotor as a full-time member. I mean, he's served, and I think, you know, his experience and that, as is, if not our policy, our tradition. I mean, there's no reason to not appoint him for another full term. And he's, I think, had a year and a half as a full-time member. And I know he has chaired, you know, stepped in for the chair, and the chair has, outgoing chair, was very pleased with how he performed in that role. And he's just been, he has, I mean, there's no reason not to. He's served very well. He's very prepared. He's very committed. He brings a lot to the board. So I don't know why we wouldn't have him continue. And I'm with Kathy, where I'm, you know, torn between David Offeld for the other full-time member and Hilda. I mean, Hilda, you know, there's probably no one more knowledgeable in town about our zoning bylaws than Hilda. I think David Offeld, you know, also his experience as an engineer and in wetlands development, you know, that wetlands is coming up more frequently as a consideration in building projects. So you know, and he's been an excellent associate member, as has Hilda, but I think that area of expertise is important. So that is a really hard one for the second full-time member.
Thank you. Pat, I know you have some thoughtful comments.
I don't have a lot to say. I agree, Stephen, I would really enjoy having him be an associate member. I think he'll do a good job and will work hard to learn what he needs to learn. So that's kind of neat. I definitely support David Alfeld for full membership because of his engineering and hydrology experience. Not to take someone so highly qualified would be an error on our part, I think. And I'm torn between David and Hilda, but for different reasons, and I probably would go with David Slobotor simply because he served for 3.5 years and has some knowledge. Hilda has served historically. Both of them are thoughtful. Both of them are thoughtful people, but I think for me it would be David and David. D&D, Dungeons and Dragons.
And so I'll weigh in. Oh, Jennifer, go ahead. You're muted. You're muted.
And then we would recommend Hilda for an
Oh,
associate
yes,
position.
yes, thank you. Yes, I'm not trying to leave her off.
Got it.
Thank you.
I'm also delighted to have Stephen Casey put his name in the hat. I really appreciate in this case, I sometimes question, why do we have associate members? There are no other boards that have associate members, but when we look at there are only 5 ZBA members, so it's a pretty small pool, and if somebody is going to be absent, it's harder to get your quorum and your continuity on a project. So I appreciate the opportunity as a learning experience. So I fully support Stephen for that role. I will weigh in on David Sloviter serving as a full member in the projects, the hearings that I've listened into. It's just the approach is very equitable and sort of even-handed. I think it's a really good sign that people are listening and listening well. There's not, I get no sense whatsoever of, preconceived ideas. It's a very solid application of the conditions and stepping through the process. So I'm really pleased with that. I would endorse David Sloviter for that role. As with many of you, both David Alfelt and and Hilda bring lots of skills, lots of knowledge. If we could utilize all the knowledge in someone's head and be able to transfer it to somebody, wouldn't that be wonderful? I guess that's what books and libraries are for. I do appreciate David Alfelt's civil engineering background. I wish there were an engineer on the planning board, and there isn't. Nobody applied that had that background. I think it's an important skill. So if I had to make a decision at this very moment, I probably would lean toward David as the other full member. Jennifer.
Yeah, and the associates really not infrequently have to step up to the board. So they get have a lot of participation experience, because if you're going to miss one meeting, then you have to have an associate that can follow the application through.
I think one of the things, though, and actually Hilda brought it up, in the fact that our gender diversity on the ZBA is pretty poor. There is no full member that's a woman on the board now, and bringing Hilda in as a full-time person would certainly help address that. Jennifer.
No, I was just going to comment that we actually had received calves from 2 women, but then they both, they decided to withdraw.
I talked to Steve Judge, about his recommendation on the criteria, and as we were going through that, I asked what he felt the time commitment was for the ZBA, and he said, as a chair, let's not talk about the time it takes as a chair, but as a regular member, he said he thought maybe 4 to 5 hours a week was probably about right, and that includes the meetings that are every 2 weeks. So I think the burden is actually less than people imagine, and I think if we can get that word out, that would be helpful. Councillor Haneke.
Given where everyone's leaning, if I add it up, I think we've got kind of a consensus for David and David as full members and Hilda and Stephen as associate members. Given where people were leaning when they said they were leaning one way or another. And if that's the case, I wonder if we're ready for a motion.
I don't see anybody shaking their head.
Then I'm happy to make a motion.
Would you?
Which is to recommend that the council appoint David Alfeld and David Slaviter to the ZBA for terms beginning July 1, 2025 and ending June 30, 2028, and appoint Stephen Casey and Hilda Greenbaum as associate members of the ZBA for terms beginning July 1, 2025 and ending June 30, 2026.
Is there a second?
8 seconds.
I'm jotting the down just so I have captured. Any other comments?
Now, my only comment, Pam, would be in writing this up, capture what we were saying, that we have 4 strong candidates, and it was difficult to decide on the 2 full-time slots because we had actually 3 people capable of doing full-time slots in experience and knowledge. So I just would give some flavor to that.
Yes,
And
thank
but
you.
it also means we've got 2 very strong associates, so it's a good pool.
Thank you. I'm jotting that down so I don't forget. I'm ready to take a vote then. Let's start with Counselor Haneke,
Aye.
Pat DeAngelis,
Aye.
Kathy Shane,
Yes.
Jennifer Taub,
Yes.
and Pam Rooney is a yes. Wonderful. In light of this, I have the report crafted. The report for the planning board discussion went off to Athena, so that's in the packet for the town council meeting on the 30th. This report will go out tonight so that it's in the packet. In fact, I'm going to try to get it done ASAP so
Thank
that it
you.
can meet the deadline for the 30th. I need to alert you all, since we had the conversation for the planning board. It didn't occur to me, but did as I was crafting the report, that Lawrence Klutz's position as a vacancy was not actually for a 3-year vacancy. It is a 2-year remainder of his term. And so I put that in the report, because we're essentially voting the whole list again as a full council. I wonder if that would be an opportunity to make an amendment to one of the motions on changing something from a 3-year term to a 2-year term. And I'm interested in your thoughts on that. Mandy.
So it's my understanding that we only recommended 2. Of the 3 openings. And that there's one that had a tie for a 3-2. There was one opening where 2 candidates had the same amount of support, and therefore there was no recommendation there. So if there are 2 3-year terms and 1 2-year term, it seems to me that the recommendation makes sense that the 2 that had the most consensus on this committee would get recommended for 3-year terms, and that the sort of the spot that is left open for recommendation is the 2-year term spot. To me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Does to me too.
Kathy, and then we'll maybe talk about how that gets handled at the meeting.
Okay. I don't think I agree with that. And I realize we could have taken a 3rd vote on those 2 candidates, because one of the candidates has just served 3 years and would normally have been up for 3 years. And so turn it into 2 does not make sense to me. I do understand, Mandy, that that's the simplest way to handle it, since I didn't know at the point we were voting that there were 2 3-year terms and 1 2-year term. Yeah,
Two
so
and one.
None of us recognize that, right?
no, I'm just saying I didn't know that. I wouldn't probably have affected my vote, but just to say that of the 2 where there were a different 3 of us that were yeses, one of them is just finishing up a 3-year term, and to then turn that if she becomes the choice, to turn it into a 2-year term doesn't make sense to me. So it's just because of
Yeah.
that phenomenon. If they were both new to the board, if they were both new, I would say fine to the solution that whichever of those 2 comes out with a majority of council would get the 2-year. So I do understand why Mandy thought that would be the most straightforward way to handle it.
Pat, did you started?
Yeah. I think we should leave it to the council. I really liked Mandy's solution. I don't agree with your reasoning, Kathy, and that's okay. I mean, I hear you honoring that service. But I can't go along with that decision, and I won't in the council on that particular person. So I think we need to bring it all full back to the council.
So Jennifer, and then I'll.
No, I was just gonna say, I think we should make the decision not based on the individual candidates, but kind of I don't know if it's a policy, but it should.
Well, then it doesn't matter whether they've had experience or not, because we're not looking at that if we're not looking at the individual candidates.
Well, are we saying that a candidate that's applying for a second full term, whoever that candidate is,
Could get bumped to a 2-year term. Yes.
you're saying that they could, and I agree with Kathy that I think
Well,
that
Well, they're
You know-
tied though. They're tied. It's not that we said, oh, if we had known it was a 2-year term.
well, if
We have 2
I-
candidates that are tied, we should bring it to the council and let the council make the decision about the 2 candidates.
no, but the term for they are going to make the decision on the 2 candidates, but then
Right.
they have to know when they vote on all 3 what the terms are.
Right,
Can
so
I just ask, just a question? If this situation must have happened before, so if someone
Mhm.
comes in and picks up the last 2 years of someone, are they then eligible for 4 more or just for 3 more? I mean, what I'm saying, just in the pure, we don't know who the human being is. If you're finishing up, so because we've normally said 6 years, so is it, do you understand what I'm asking? Like, is it a
Yeah.
bunch of?
Didn't
So
that
I'm gonna-
happen
I'm
to
gonna-
Doug Marshall?
Yes. Doug was in for, I think, a 1-year wrap up a term, and then he has been, he was appointed for 3 years and then was renewed for 3 years. So Doug when he finishes, will have served 7 years. So, it's sort of a combination
Okay.
of who's,
Okay,
what do you,
no, that answered
what's-
my question. It's
Yeah.
6 is a hypothetical number rather than you hit the
It's a-
wall.
yeah, yes, exactly. It's sort of typical. It's seems appropriate in a lot of cases to have a renewal of somebody who's doing a good job. And I know we've had several discussions about people that we didn't think were doing a good job and didn't want to renew them necessarily. And then, they were renewed anyway. So, Councilor Haneke.
2 things to answer Kathy's question. Anyone whose appointment would take them over 6 years, the policy deals with that together. So that's whether they're seeking a third 3-year term after they've served 2, or whether they've had these kind of ones where it'd be a third term, but the first or second year would be the 5th or 6th year, and then it would take them over. Get the same consideration under the council policy that's been adopted. Number 2, it seems like for each of us, there might be different considerations based on who is nominated at the council to serve in each of the 3 roles, and therefore it makes sense to me that given that this body did not make a full recommendation, that we don't make a recommendation on any terms and that we make the note that the council, when they vote, have to choose and put people in for 2 3-year terms and 1 2-year term, but that it would be potentially, it sounds like we'd be rehashing the same concerns we had last week. And at this point, I don't think it's appropriate for us to do that. We've made our report, the report is in.
Right.
And we should just let the council decide with the note that Pam said.
I think that's right, Mandy, because also to amend it at this point. And so Pam, you'll just have to make it clear that we've got 3 slots, 2 of which are 3 years and 1 of which is 2 years. Yeah.
Right, right. I wish it were cleaner, but the way it's structured is, you know, so and so is recommended for a term beginning. I mean, they're all listed, and they're all listed with the term beginning July 1, 25 and ending June 30. So I'm not predetermining, if you will, who is being considered for a shorter term. I could have, I suppose, restructured it, but we hadn't voted on it, right? We had not discussed it. We had not voted on it. So it's basically the way it came out of our conference. Jennifer.
It's just sort of a comment. I just wonder how, unless the counselors listen to the interview, how they would decide who should be a 2 and who should be a 3, but nothing we can do about that.
Well, I think
Mhm.
people will say what they have to say about different candidates when we're in council. And then counselors will make up their minds.
And it's probably going to end up the simple way that Mandy just said, that whoever the third person is gets 2. Yeah, I mean, it's my guess is that, but I don't think we should predetermine that right
Yeah.
now.
Okay, thank you. So that wraps up action items, and that informs the ZBA report that goes to Athena this evening. The announcements are our next CRC meeting is July 10. And then future agenda items, we got handed a plate full. So we have solar bylaw, the ADU bylaw, the fees in lieu of affordable housing or affordable units bylaw. And I guess those, I'm looking at Mandy, those start the clock upon referral. I think we have 65 days at least to begin the hearings for those, at least those ADU and fees in lieu of bylaws. Mandy.
Yeah, my question was, when are you planning on starting those hearings? They obviously need about 3 weeks plus planning because of getting notices into the paper and all.
Right, right. It felt like next week, just because of our attention on this has been fully on getting ZBA and planning board populated. It feels like I would like to have some really solid work done on the solar bylaw on the 10th of July. We have 2 staff people that have dedicated a lot of time to this and would like to come out of that meeting on the 10th with a pretty clear direction of where we're going to try to go to pull that together. And for that, the question might be, do we want any kind of presentation from the Housing Trust and or Nate Malloy on either of the other 2 topics on the 10th, or do we just target the 24th? And again, I'm going to sort of look at Mandy. Both of these bylaws have the same time frame. Is that correct?
I believe they were both referred on the same day, so they would, but even if you're looking at the 24th, the paper and the notice needs to go like the 9th, it has to be in the paper, so you'd have to get it to Athena in the paper probably early next week, given the holiday, to
Right.
get published in the paper in time. It might be
Yeah.
enough time.
No, that makes sense.
Personally, I don't think we need presentations on these separate from the hearings because we already had presentations on them. And so we obviously need people available for the hearing dates. So setting a hearing on a date people might not be available wouldn't make sense. So I'd say check with whoever intends to answer questions at the hearing to make sure they are available for the hearings before you set it.
And that makes, that gives a little more credence to putting it to the 24th, because
Yeah.
we can find out if people are on vacation and all
Yeah,
that.
well, you can't hold a hearing on the 10th. There's not enough time. It would have had to be published
Oh,
today.
yeah.
I mean, it
That's
needs
right.
published in a paper 2 weeks in advance. You can't do it on the 10th.
Right.
So well, I'll just shout out since I'm not muted. I totally agree. I totally agree. We don't need presentations. Both of these are pretty straightforward, what's been proposed. And so, and the other thing is I will not be available on July 10th. I'm somewhere in Poland in a mountain and I
Good.
can't
Oh,
count.
wonderful for you, but sad for us.
Well, I'm only slightly more there tonight, but I really don't want to do that to the people we're visiting.
Thank you for tuning in, joining.
But I am back, and so, you know, the hearings anytime after the 15th of July, I'm around, so.
Okay.
So just on solar, I also think taking any time away from trying to get to putting a period on it doesn't make sense, so I would just, you know, on July 10th, move as fast as you can, and my plea to accept some of the edits so that I can read it would be great. You know, I just am having back filing on which of the edits that are blue line we actually all agreed on and which are still in a holding pattern. I'm a pretty close reader, but I still can't completely diagnose it. So
Yep. Good.
so
Good. So I will reach out right away to Chris Brestrup and Stephanie. We will focus on July 10th, and then we'll put the material together for public notice of hearings starting on the 24th. And I'm going to list, I'm going to list both the ADU and the fees. Is there anybody?
2 separate hearings with 2 separate start times.
Right, exactly.
I mean, they can be in the same notice, I think, but
Right, I think
you
it
have
can
to
be in the
list
same
2
notice,
separate
because that would
hearing
save,
times.
a little money to put it in
Yeah.
the same notice. What was I gonna say? Something like, is there anybody in particular? I'll find out who wants to speak, you know, to those articles as a staff person, or be there for our conversation without a huge presentation. So I'll figure that out. Okay. I think that's a wrap. So there were no items not anticipated 48 hours in advance. And I think we are free to adjourn.
And thank you for getting the report out so quickly,
Oh, yeah,
turning it around.
yeah.
Okay,
And thanks for these. Go ahead.
I move that we adjourn.
I second.
Second.
Okay,
I gotta feed
let's
the dog.
let's let Kathy go. Kathy.
yes,
Enjoy
Yeah,
enjoy Poland.
enjoy.
Yeah. Jennifer.
Yes.
Pat.
Hi.
Counselor Haneke.
Bye.
And Pam Rooney is an aye. Thank you, everybody. That was
Bye, Athena.
really productive.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye. Thank you.